0512 local time, Persian Gulf. The radar display inside the carrier's Combat Information Center updates on its standard cycle. Then something on the northern edge of the picture moves. One contact, then another materializes beside it, then three more in quick succession. Within seconds, 5 separate tracks are sliding across the tactical screen in tight formation, all bearing down from the north at a speed that separates them from every other vessel in the picture. The radar operator leans into the display. 5 surface contacts, bearing 027. A pause while the system refines the data. Speed 28 knots, accelerating. Commercial shipping does not accelerate in formation. Merchant traffic does not coordinate headings toward a carrier strike group at speed. Inside the CIC, the contacts are tagged immediately and fed into the tracking system. Bearing, velocity, radar emissions, the classification comes back within seconds. Iranian Navy surface combatants. Distance 38 nautical miles. Closing. Up on the bridge, the Persian Gulf looks exactly as it should at this hour. Flat water under early morning sun. Sailors walking the rails on routine watch. Flight deck crews moving between secured aircraft, running pre-operational checks before the day's flying schedule. From the outside, nothing about the morning suggests that the tactical picture below the waterline of this ship's awareness has already changed. A calm voice reaches the bridge from below. 5 Iranian naval vessels approaching from the north. Nobody raises a voice in response. Nobody needs to. The captain moves to the tactical repeater near the helm and reads the data without hurry. Carrier strike groups operate under a governing principle that is drilled until it becomes reflex. Never compress your own decision cycle by reacting faster than the situation requires. The carrier holds its course, cutting through the water at 20 knots. 2 guided missile destroyers hold the outer defensive screen, while a cruiser manages the broader surface and air picture from several miles off the formation's flank. Every radar in the group is now assigned to the same 5 contacts. At 0516, the electronic warfare console registers the first emissions from the approaching ships. Surface search radars, Iranian naval band, low power, wide sweep. The 5 warships are scanning the carrier group. The EW officer begins logging the signal parameters. Radar signatures confirmed. Iranian naval pattern. The carrier group does not respond. Not yet. Distance to contact, 30 nautical miles, then 27. On the display, the 5 Iranian ships maintain their formation, line abreast, spaced evenly, moving in parallel like a single directed object. Formation discipline at that speed does not happen by coincidence. It requires coordination, and coordination at this range toward this target carries one clear interpretation. This is deliberate pressure. At 0518, the first radio hail goes out on international maritime frequencies. Iranian naval vessels. This is a United States Navy carrier strike group operating in international waters. You are approaching at unsafe speed. Alter course immediately. The frequency stays silent. The radar operator continues tracking. Contacts now 31 knots. The engines on those ships are being pushed. The closure rate is climbing. Inside CIC, the closest point of approach calculation begins updating with each sweep cycle. CPA, 12 nautical miles. Time to CPA, 14 minutes. On the bridge, the captain watches the numbers. Then he gives his first order of the morning. Maintain course. No adjustment to speed or heading. The message embedded in that instruction is as deliberate as the Iranian formation's bearing. The carrier group will not be displaced by speed or geometry. It will hold its water. At 0521, the formation changes shape. Rather than maintaining the tight line abreast that had defined their approach, the 5 Iranian ships begin separating. One angles slightly west, another drifts east. The spacing between hulls grows and the straight line starts curving into something wider. The tactical officer reads it without prompting. They're spreading. Another voice completes the assessment. Encirclement pressure formation. The 5 ships are no longer simply closing the distance, they are positioning around it, constructing the early geometry of a loose semicircle that, if completed, would place the carrier group at its center. Distance, 21 nautical miles. Still closing. At 0524, the electronic warfare console produces a different signal. Narrower bandwidth, stronger output. The operator looks up from his display. Possible fire control radars sweep across the formation. The room absorbs that without comment. Fire control radar occupies a specific category in the threat hierarchy. It is not a weapons lock, it is not a launch, but it is the step that precedes both, and everyone in this room understands what the progression looks like. On the bridge, the captain gives the next order without hesitation. Set Condition 3. The command moves through the carrier and its escorts simultaneously. Condition 3 means every combat station is manned. Missile crews take their positions. Radar operators lock onto the approaching contacts. On the deck of the nearest destroyer, the 5-inch gun traverses slowly toward the horizon. Not to a firing bearing, not fast enough to signal aggression, just far enough to be visible to any set of optics watching from those approaching hulls. The carrier continues forward, steady, unaltered. Inside CIC, the display updates again. CPA now 9 nautical miles. Then something new appears at the edge of the surface picture. A contact lifts off the deck of one of the Iranian warships. Not surface, not stationary. Rising. The radar operator refines the track. Air contact. Launched from one of the Iranian vessels. Altitude 200 feet. Heading toward the strike group. A helicopter. Its rotor signature firms up on the display as it climbs away from the Iranian warship deck and begins moving south at 80 knots. From the carrier's flight deck, the silhouette eventually becomes visible against the pale horizon. A dark shape low over the water, approaching on a direct line. Inside CIC, the tactical officer reads the intercept geometry. Helicopter range, 16 nautical miles. The recommendation follows immediately. Airborne intercept. The captain answers with a single nod. Launch the fighters. The command reaches the flight deck in seconds. Yellow shirt directors pivot into motion. The first FA-18 Super Hornet is rolled to the catapult. Steam rises from the track as pilots strap in and deck crews run final safety checks. The catapult fires. The jet leaves the deck in a burst of heat and vapor, climbing hard. The second aircraft follows it into the sky moments later. Both fighters turn north, accelerating through 400 knots, closing the distance toward the approaching helicopter. Below them, the 5 Iranian surface ships continue their widening arc. The semicircle is stretching now across several miles of open water. At 0529, the electronic warfare console lights up again. Surface radar emissions increasing. Multiple sensors scanning. Pattern consistent with targeting search behavior. 5 ships, all actively scanning the carrier group. Not fire control locks, not yet, but the frequency and structure of the emissions have shifted toward the upper end of search behavior, the kind of sweep pattern that precedes a targeting solution. Distance between the formations, 9 nautical miles. On radar, 2 Iranian vessels adjust heading again, edging closer to the carrier's projected track. Their wakes mark long white lines across the dark water. One of the destroyer escorts reports visual confirmation. Iranian ships maneuvering aggressively. High overhead, the 2 Super Hornets have bracketed the Iranian helicopter from opposite quadrants. The lead pilot opens the radio channel. Iranian helicopter, you are approaching a United States carrier strike group. Alter course immediately. No reply. Instead, the helicopter banks and descends, dropping to barely 100 feet above the wave tops. The maneuver reduces its radar profile marginally and communicates something else entirely. The crew knows what it is doing and is not deterred by the fighters above it. The aircraft presses forward on the same bearing. Inside CIC, the watch tracks the descent, helicopter running low profile. The fighters hold position above and behind it, faster by a wide margin and holding every tactical advantage. They are not there to intercept aggressively. They are there to make the helicopter's crew continuously aware that every move is being observed from a platform that can end the encounter on command. 7 nautical miles between the formations, then 6. Inside the destroyer escort closest to the Iranian ships, the CIC receives a new reading from the EW station. Narrow-band radar energy across the formation. Stronger output. The electronic warfare officer's voice tightens slightly at the edges. Possible targeting radar spike. 1 Iranian vessel. The room goes quiet around that sentence. Targeting radar means active weapon system calculations. The ship's fire control computer, somewhere in that formation, is now working through a firing solution. Not a launch, not a trigger pulled, but the sequence has moved one step further along the progression that everyone in this room has spent their careers studying. At 0533, new contacts appear, small, fast. The operator zooms the tracking window and watches the shapes resolve. 4 contacts detaching from 1 Iranian vessel. Speed climbing, 30 knots, now 40. 4 fast attack craft, released from the Iranian warship's deck and now accelerating south across the water directly toward the carrier group. On radar, they spread like fingers, 4 separate tracks fanning out at full throttle. Distance, 5 nautical miles and closing. Inside CIC, the tactical officer identifies the pattern before the classification populates. Multiple small surface craft, fast attack profile. On the water, they are barely visible yet. Thin hull shapes bouncing hard across the chop, leaving long white wakes behind them. On radar, they are unmistakable. Iranian fast attack boats, the kind built to cover distance quickly and deliver pressure at close range before a larger ship's defensive systems can fully engage. The carrier strike group responds without delay. Recommend surface response posture, the tactical officer says. Execute, the captain answers. One of the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers slides forward of the carrier's bow, placing its hull between the incoming boats and the ship it is there to protect. The destroyer's radar locks onto the fast craft instantly. Inside its CIC, the fire control system populates range and speed data. No weapons released, everything positioned and ready. On the destroyer's forward deck, the 5-inch gun rotates to face the approaching boats. The movement is unhurried and deliberate, steel pivoting with quiet mechanical precision. From the perspective of crews aboard those fast attack craft racing toward them across open water, the gun's bearing is unambiguous. Above, the two Super Hornets tighten their orbit, one pilot dropping to a lower altitude for a direct visual on the approaching boats. The radio opens again. Iranian vessels approaching a United States carrier strike group. Reduce speed immediately. The message repeats, English first, then Persian. No response. The boats continue closing. 4 nautical miles. 3. Inside the destroyer's CIC, the closest point of approach number keeps updating. CPA, 1 nautical mile. At that distance, fast attack craft operating without communication in the direction of a carrier present a problem that the defensive geometry of the strike group cannot absorb without response. The tactical officer states the obvious. They're not reducing speed. The destroyer's captain issues the order, prepare warning shot. The gun crew locks targeting coordinates into the fire control system. The aim point is open water, a position directly in front of the lead boat's projected track. No impact on any Iranian hull, a column of seawater between where the boats are and where they are heading. At 0536, the cannon fires. The report carries across the Persian Gulf like a single hard crack of thunder. The shell travels low and fast and detonates against the surface several hundred meters ahead of the Iranian formation. A wall of white water erupts into the air and holds for a moment before collapsing back into the sea. The effect is measurable on radar almost immediately. The lead boat hesitates. One craft drifts slightly to port, another angles right, but 2 of the 4 continue forward, 2 nautical miles. From the carrier's deck, a Seahawk helicopter lifts into the Gulf air, rotors hammering hard as it accelerates toward the boats. It drops to 200 feet above the surface and drives forward fast, positioning itself between the approaching craft and the carrier. The sensor operator activates the electro-optical system. 4 gray hulls appear in sharp resolution on the cockpit display. Crew members visible on deck, engines pushed to maximum. The Seahawk banks hard and places itself in the lead boat's direct line of travel. A narrow green beam of laser light sweeps across the bridge windows of the forward craft. Non-lethal, precisely aimed. Impossible to mistake for anything other than what it is. The radio transmission follows without pause. Iranian fast craft. You are approaching a United States carrier strike group in an unsafe manner. Reduce speed and alter course immediately. The helicopter makes 1 orbit, the green laser touching briefly across each of the remaining boats. Inside the destroyer's CIC, 2 of the fast craft begin showing speed reduction on radar. The other 2 continue forward. Distance, 1.5 nautical miles. Then the electronic warfare console spikes. The operator reads the change instantly. Radar emission from 1 Iranian warship. Frequency shift, more focused, more structured. The EW officer does not hesitate. Possible fire control radar lock. The room goes still. Not the stillness of shock, the stillness of people who have trained for exactly this moment and are now applying that training at full concentration. A fire control radar lock means a weapons system aboard one of those Iranian warships has moved from search to targeting. The trigger has not been pulled, but the gun is pointed. On the surface, the Seahawk continues circling. The 2 remaining fast boats are now inside a mile of the destroyer escort. Behind them, one of the larger Iranian warships is turning, slowly, deliberately, its bow coming around toward the carrier strike group. Then a hatch opens on its deck. The radar operator watches the contacts sharpen. Possible missile launcher activity. Iranian vessel. Nobody in CIC speaks for a moment. Then the EW officer delivers the assessment that ends the ambiguity. Targeting radar confirmed. The moment those words enter the room, the captain gives the order. Set condition 1. Across the entire strike group, the command executes in seconds. Condition 1. Full combat readiness. Missile crews move into position at the vertical launch cells. Fire control systems align across multiple platforms simultaneously. Radar operators lock onto every Iranian hull within engagement range. Nothing is released. Every weapon is ready. The Seahawk helicopter is still circling the fast attack boats below, the green laser designator pulsing steadily against the lead craft's bridge windows. Inside the cockpit, the pilot reads the distance. 1.2 nautical miles. The radio call goes out again. Iranian fast craft. You are approaching a United States carrier strike group. Alter course immediately. For several seconds, nothing changes. The two leading boats push forward through the water. The larger warship behind them continues its slow turn toward the American formation. On its deck, the missile hatch remains open. Inside the destroyer's CIC, the closest point of approach reaches its lowest value, CPA under 1 nautical mile. Above, the two Super Hornets shift lower across the sky, passing over the Iranian boats in a fast, controlled run. Not a gun pass, not a targeting maneuver, just presence delivered at the speed of a fighter aircraft. A physical reminder from above of what this engagement looks like from the outside. Inside the Seahawk cockpit, the sensor operator zooms the camera to maximum resolution. Faces are visible on the boat decks now, men gripping rails, engines at full noise. And then something changes in the lead boat's behavior. A fractional speed reduction, the kind that appears first as a rounding error on the display and then confirms on the next sweep. Speed dropping, 40 knots to 32. The second boat follows seconds later. The Seahawk holds its orbit. The laser stays on. Another radio call goes out, reduce speed immediately. The boats drift forward through their own deceleration wake. Then the lead vessel turns, just a few degrees. Not a retreat, not a full course reversal, but the bow is no longer aimed at the carrier strike group on a direct line. Inside the destroyer's CIC, the radar officer calls it out. Lead craft altering heading. Speed now 28 knots. The tension does not lift. Because on the electronic warfare console, the Iranian Warships' fire control radar is still transmitting. The lock is still present. The operator watches the frequency with complete attention. Then the signal stops. No fade, no gradual reduction. Just silence where the targeting emission had been. Radar lock lost. The operator verifies once, then confirms it. On the water, the change propagates through the Iranian formation over the next several minutes. The two fast attack boats ease their throttles back. The spray around their hulls settles. They drift sideways across the wave lines, their forward momentum bleeding off. Behind them, the warship that had opened its missile hatch begins a gradual turn away from the American formation. The hatch on its deck slides shut. Inside the carrier strike group, every radar track continues. The captain on the bridge watches without expression. At 0541, the first Iranian warship completes its withdrawal turn. The second follows. Then the third. The semicircle that had been tightening around the carrier strike group reverses its geometry, the arc opening and dissolving as 5 ships adjust their headings back toward the north. Distance begins increasing on the display. 1 nautical mile, 2, 3. Above, the Seahawk makes a final orbit over the now slowing fast attack boats, the laser designator dark. The helicopter climbs, banks, and heads back toward the carrier. The two Super Hornets hold their altitude and maintain tracking as the Iranian ships open range. Inside CIC, the tactical officer states the situation simply. Contacts withdrawing. For several minutes, the carrier strike group holds its formation unchanged. Weapons still in their ready state. Radar still locked onto every withdrawing contact. No course correction, no reduction in posture. The Iranian warships that had been pressing the formation into a fire control targeting scenario just minutes ago are now moving steadily away across the Persian Gulf. One officer summarizes the encounter in 4 words. They pushed the line. The captain looks at the radar display one final time before responding, and they found it. What follows is not celebration. It is analysis. While the withdrawing contacts move northward and flight operations resume on the carrier deck, a different kind of work is already underway inside the ship's intelligence and electronic warfare sections. The encounter lasted under 30 minutes. What it produced in raw sensor data will outlast it by years. Every radar frequency the Iranian ships activated during the approach has been captured and logged. Every emission pattern, every signal bandwidth, every timing interval between sweeps. The brief fire control radar lock that flashed across the carrier group before the formation broke, that signal is particularly valuable. To a naval intelligence analyst, it is the equivalent of a fingerprint. It identifies the specific targeting system aboard that Iranian warship, its operating range, the characteristics of its tracking software, the behavioral signature it produces when it transitions from search to weapons engagement mode. The next time that signal appears on an American electronic warfare console, the ship receiving it will know exactly what it means and exactly how much time it has. Inside CIC, the EW officer confirms the data package. Electronic signatures captured, all 5 vessels, full frequency log. The information transfers immediately through the strike group's network to analysts aboard the cruiser escort and continues beyond the formation itself to intelligence platforms above the atmosphere, still observing the withdrawing Iranian ships as they approach their coastline. On the bridge, the captain gives the order that ends the encounter's active phase. Maintain course. The carrier does not accelerate after the retreating formation. It does not broadcast any signal of reaction. The massive ship simply continues cutting forward through the water on the same heading it held at 0512. its wake stretching white and straight behind it, as if the morning had unfolded exactly as planned. Within the hour, the flight deck has returned to its operational rhythm. Yellow shirts direct aircraft toward the catapult. Steam rolls across the deck as the launch cycle begins again. The sounds and motion of a carrier conducting routine flight operations fill the air above the Gulf, as though the encounter was simply another entry in the watch log. To any observer beyond the formation's horizon, nothing visible would suggest that this fleet had spent the last 30 minutes inside a scenario with a fire control radar lock, 4 armed fast attack craft at close range, and an open missile hatch on an Iranian warship. Encounters like this one rarely produce the imagery that defines public understanding of naval conflict. No missiles, no fires, no wreckage, just warships maneuvering across open water while sensors quietly collect everything that moves. But inside the databases of the US Navy, mornings like this one leave a different kind of mark. Detailed, permanent, and operationally significant in ways that will not be visible until the next encounter begins. Iranian naval doctrine returns repeatedly to pressure tactics. Fast boats, coordinated surface approaches, aggressive radar activity timed to compress a defender's reaction window. The goal shifts depending on the operation. Sometimes the objective is political signal. Sometimes it is to probe for hesitation or procedural gaps. Sometimes it is pure intelligence collection, revealing how an American strike group sequences its responses under sustained, layered pressure. This morning, the tactic worked in both directions simultaneously. The Iranian formation approached a U.S. carrier strike group expecting to apply pressure and observe the reaction. What it revealed instead was the precise electronic signature of its own targeting systems, the coordination rhythm between its surface and fast attack elements, the threshold at which its commanding officer chose to withdraw, and the specific sensor behavior that preceded that decision. That information now belongs to the people who will be on watch the next time an Iranian warship appears on a carrier's radar display at 28 knots from the north. Inside the Combat Information Center, the radar picture has returned to its standard pattern. Distant shipping lanes, scattered civilian traffic, horizon contacts with no tactical significance. The 5 Iranian contacts are now beyond 20 nautical miles, still tracked, no longer relevant. The tactical officer reviews the final situation report. No weapons expended, no damage, all systems nominal. The captain acknowledges it and turns back toward the horizon. Moments like this one carry weight that is difficult to quantify in conventional terms. There is no headline that captures the full shape of what just happened. The geometry of the approach, the sequence of radar emissions, the second the fire control lock appeared, and the second it disappeared. The discipline of a formation that held its posture through all of it without firing a single round into a vessel. But somewhere in the Persian Gulf, the crews of 5 Iranian warships are now heading back toward port with a precise understanding of what they encountered and where the line was drawn. And the crew of a U.S. carrier strike group is heading into the rest of the day with a complete record of how those ships operate under pressure. Every signal, every maneuver, every decision, preserved with more clarity than any intelligence brief could produce. The next encounter will happen across the same water. Both sides will enter it knowing more than they did before this morning. That asymmetry matters, and it belongs entirely to the side that held its course.